there's this great retreat that the Presbytery of Chicago and the Synod of Lincoln Trails all support. Also, the Presbytery of Black Hawk. This new pastors retreat, and sort of it's I think it's a 3-year cohort cycle, and this is the 23rd cohort that they've sponsored, and I'm a part of these new members that were brought into the Presbytery of Chicago, and we were reflecting with one of my colleagues, about the idea of whether, in comparison to other professions, like let's say if you're a construction worker, or you're a doctor, or you're a big shot at a corporation, I think people assume you're really busy, you're really working hard, and you're really contributing to the world in some way. Like you're meeting tangible and immediate needs in so many of those cases. And we were wondering whether pastors sometimes get caught up in trying to defend the profession by lamenting how hard it is or how challenging it is.
Oh, man.
What do you think about that?
I think a lot about that because sometimes my fellow clerics make me absolutely nuts when they constantly complain, and I'm sure I have too, but constantly complain about how hard their gig is. Is it challenging? There is no question about it. Is it difficult? Absolutely. Are the vast majority of pastors seriously underpaid? There's no question about it. Are they face-to-face with difficult cultures and individual situations with people? There's no doubt. But anybody who's spent some time in the business world, or anybody who's had their own business, or anyone who's a pastor who's paid attention in an in-depth way to the lives of the people in their congregation will know that there are struggles going on in the lives of the people in their church that are unbelievable. The person whose sole income is based on commission, and they know that if they don't get their numbers for that quarter, they lose their job, and they've got 3 kids and a spouse at home and a mortgage that they don't know how they're going to pay. The ministry is difficult, but most ministers, I think, don't have a sense of how incredibly challenging the business world is, what a cutthroat environment it can be in so many ways, and how you're only as good as, your last quarter's performance. And all you have to do is sit down and talk with the people in your congregation to understand that. So, is the ministry difficult? There's absolutely no question it's difficult in so many ways. But don't think that that's any different than anybody else in a congregation. I really believe that.
Well, one of my colleagues there at the retreat kind of was talking about that a bit by saying, they told the story of being at a funeral, or a memorial service, and, they were just given the urn with the ashes, and he sort of, without thought, just kind of went through the routine and kind of went through that, and it suddenly hit him, like, I just held the remains of a human being that has a story, that has memory, that has family, and I was so numb to it. And he realized something's wrong here if I'm missing this sacred moment. And I think for me, I just sometimes think about that in terms of the fun and the seriousness, because sometimes I feel like we take ourselves so seriously that we miss those serious moments that I think are sacred. The times I've done a wedding or a memorial service, it's not that they're not taxing or challenging, but they feed me at the same time, because it's so nourishing to do and spend time with people that I couldn't possibly see myself going like, oh man, I have to do this other memorial service or this other wedding, because they feed me in some way.
See, I think you're right about that. That maybe the ministry exists in greater emotional extremes than most jobs. So, for example, it's more difficult to deal with a family who has just lost a loved one, or in particular, a child. You know, that's like hell having to deal with that. But the flip side is to have the privilege of baptizing a baby, you know, or being the third person in a triad with the bride and the groom and you. And you're charged with the privilege of leading that most intimate and intense moment, probably to that stage in their entire lives, and being invited into that experience, and then helping shape it in such a way that it's all that they hoped it would be. That's a higher high than you usually get in most lines of work. So the lows are really low, the highs are really high. I think that's what it is in the ministry. And in between, I just think that there are plenty of opportunities to make ministry and to make life fun, you know, and you know that's just the philosophy of ministry, and it's partly because I'm wired that way, and it's partly because that's just what's evolved for us, and that's what feels right. And for people who seek a really serious-minded approach to ministry, and that it can only be that way, God bless them. But I think that there's
is that the Southern bless your heart?
I guess so. And I think at a time when the church is at a crossroads and there are so many clergy in the same place, 60% of the churches in the United States have, 99 or fewer members, and really difficult to keep a church going with that kind of membership. Maybe there's new ways of thinking, and it's time for new models, And so I encourage you to, why not make ministry fun?
Well, see, what I have found, so here's my challenge and my joy. So the joy is, what I find so awesome about ministry is people entrust me not only with their time and their support, but also financially support me to cultivate relationships and to invite them into that cultivation of relationships, a lot of which comprises meeting for tea, meeting for a meal, going to their important life events, just being present. I'm often not I thought I had to have the answers for funerals, but I don't. I actually realize people just want you to be there. It just means a lot that you're there, or at the hospital bed. And I just find that so life-giving for me, to just spend time with people, and that's a legitimate part of my ministry. Or another part of my ministry, I get to, depending on how many times you have to preach, but just reflect on a passage of Scripture, how I experience it, how I experience the world, and think through my own stories and write about it and share it with others and hear feedback. I just find that so life-giving as well. So, I just find so many elements of it: pastoral care, preaching, being there for sacred moments, the music, just full of life and fun. But I think the challenge is going back to that. I don't know if it's the Calvinist legacy of Presbyterians and others and Baptists. I don't know if it's the, sort of this sense of the martyr, or if it's the Puritans, that life needs to have this rigidity and this discipline to it. And I'm not throwing all of those things out as not being a part of the conversation, but I sometimes feel this pressure of should I be having this much fun at Tom's Community Church, or am I not taking it seriously enough?
Yeah, you know,
And I worry about that for the next steps for New Worshiping Community. Like, what if, this is so weird to say, but I'm scared of what if it's really fun?
you might have to keep doing it, and your life will start to be defined in ways that it maybe hasn't till now.
Yeah.